Imagine this. You're standing in front of a mirror at 3 a.m., unable to sleep, staring at a stranger who wears your face. Behind your eyes, something stirs, something you've spent decades trying to silence. It's that voice that whispers your cruelest thoughts, the impulse that makes you say things you immediately regret, the part of you that feels a twisted satisfaction when others fail. You've been taught to call this your bad side, your weakness, your flaw to overcome. But what if everything you've been told about this darkness is catastrophically wrong? What if the very parts of yourself you've been running from, medicating away, praying to disappear your rage, your envy, your deepest fears and most shameful desires are not obstacles on your path to purpose, but the path itself? Picture this unsettling possibility. Every moment you spend trying to be good, every effort to present a perfect version of yourself to the world, every time you suppress what feels uncomfortable or unacceptable, you're not becoming more authentic, you're becoming less real. You're creating a beautiful lie that the world applauds while your true self withers in exile, taking with it the very thing you claim to be searching for, your reason for being. Here's the paradox that will haunt you. The person you're trying to become by rejecting your darkness already exists, but they exist in fragments, scattered across the landscape of everything you've denied about yourself. Your purpose isn't waiting to be discovered in some future achievement or spiritual awakening. It's buried alive in the psychological graveyard of everything you've decided was too dangerous, too ugly, too unacceptable to own. Think about it. When did you last feel truly alive? Not happy, not content, not successful, but electrically, dangerously, completely alive? I'm willing to bet it was in a moment when something from your depths broke through the carefully constructed walls of who you think you should be. It was when your controlled facade cracked and something raw and real emerged. Carl Jung, one of the most revolutionary minds in human psychology, spent his life studying this phenomenon. He discovered that what we call our dark side isn't actually dark, it's simply unknown. It's not evil, it's unexpressed. And most shocking of all, it's not optional. He called this rejected aspect of our psyche the shadow, and he believed that until we turn to face it, we remain psychological children, living borrowed lives, chasing borrowed dreams, never quite understanding why nothing feels fully our own. But here's where Jung's insight becomes truly terrifying. Your shadow knows things about you that your conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. It holds memories, talents, and insights that could revolutionize your understanding of who you are and why you're here. It's been trying to get your attention your entire life, through your dreams, your projections onto others, your inexplicable reactions, your self-sabotage. It's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to complete you. The question isn't whether you have a shadow, you do. The question is whether you'll continue letting it control your life from the darkness, or whether you'll find the courage to meet it face to face and discover what it's been trying to tell you all along. Because once you understand what your darkness is really offering you, everything changes. Your relationships, your work, your sense of meaning, your very identity transforms from a performance into a revelation. But before we dive deeper into this psychological underworld, if you're ready to explore the profound mysteries of human consciousness and discover ancient wisdom that could transform your understanding of yourself, consider subscribing to the channel. Leave a like if this resonates with something stirring in your depths. And drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what part of your own shadow you're beginning to recognize. If you know someone who's been searching for their true purpose but finding only empty answers, share this with them. What you're about to discover might be exactly what they need to hear. But first, you must understand why this darkness exists at all, and why everything you've learned about dealing with it has only made it stronger. The creation of your shadow began before you could even speak. Picture yourself as a child, raw, unfiltered, expressing every impulse without shame. You cried when you felt pain, raged when you felt frustrated, loved without condition, and spoke truth without calculating the consequences. You were whole, integrated, authentic, in ways that adults found both beautiful and terrifying. Then came the great conditioning. Parents, teachers, society, religion, all with the best intentions, began the careful surgery of your soul. Good children don't get angry. Nice girls don't assert themselves. Strong boys don't cry. Successful people don't show weakness. Layer by layer, piece by piece, they carved away everything that didn't fit their vision of who you should become. Jung understood that this process, while necessary for social functioning, creates what he called a fundamental split in the psyche. The acceptable parts of you became your persona, the mask you wear to navigate the world. But the unacceptable parts didn't vanish. They were banished to the psychological underworld, where they continued to live, grow, and influence you from the shadows. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this same phenomenon and warned of its dangers. He spoke of how civilization forces us to turn against our own instincts, creating what he called the sick animal humans who have become alienated from their own nature. We become strangers to ourselves, living according to borrowed values, while our authentic self remains buried and unexpressed. This split creates what Arthur Schopenhauer identified as the fundamental source of human suffering, the constant war between who we are and who we think we should be. We exhaust ourselves trying to maintain an image that feels increasingly hollow, while the very qualities that could make us powerful, creative, and truly alive remain locked away in shame. But here's where the problem becomes even more insidious. Your shadow doesn't simply disappear when ignored. It becomes unconscious, which makes it infinitely more dangerous. Carl Jung observed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Every time you react disproportionately to someone, every time you find yourself in the same destructive patterns, every time you sabotage your own success, that's your shadow operating from the darkness. The tragedy is that modern psychology and self-help culture have made this problem worse, not better. They've taught us to think positive, to focus on our strengths, to fake it till we make it. But this approach is like trying to create light by denying darkness exists. It doesn't work. It just forces the shadow deeper underground, where it grows more powerful and more distorted. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps and founded logotherapy, understood that meaning isn't found by avoiding suffering, but by integrating it. He saw that those who survived the most extreme circumstances weren't those who denied their pain, but those who found ways to transform it into purpose. This is the great secret that our culture refuses to acknowledge. Your darkness contains information. Your fears reveal what you most need to protect. Your anger shows you what you most need to defend. Your shame points to what you most need to reclaim. But instead of listening to these messages, we've been taught to medicate them, suppress them, transcend them. The result is a generation of people who feel fundamentally disconnected from themselves and their purpose. They've become experts at being who they think they should be, but they've forgotten who they actually are. They chase external validation because they've lost touch with their internal compass. They search for meaning everywhere except the one place it actually exists, in the integration of their own wholeness. Jung called this the great modern neurosis, the epidemic of people living divided against themselves. And until this division is healed, until the shadow is welcomed back into conscious awareness, we remain psychological children, reacting to life instead of creating it, following scripts instead of writing our own story. But recognizing the problem is only the beginning. The real terror lies in understanding how deeply this split has infected every aspect of your existence. Your shadow doesn't just influence your private moments of self-doubt, it orchestrates the entire theater of your life. Every relationship you choose, every career path that calls to you, every person who triggers inexplicable rage or attraction, every pattern you can't seem to break, all of it is being choreographed by parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge. Jung discovered that we don't simply repress our shadow, we project it. The traits we most despise in others are often precise mirrors of what we've banished in ourselves. That colleague whose arrogance infuriates you? You're seeing your own disowned ambition. That friend whose neediness exhausts you? You're encountering your own rejected vulnerability. The political figures who disgust you? They're embodying the power you're terrified to claim. This projection mechanism operates below the threshold of consciousness, which makes it devastatingly effective. You genuinely believe your reactions are about other people, never suspecting that you're actually having emotional conversations with disowned parts of yourself. You become trapped in what psychologists call the fundamental attribution error, assuming others act from character flaws while you act from noble intentions. But the most insidious consequence runs even deeper. Your shadow doesn't just shape how you see others, it determines who you allow yourself to become. Every time you encounter a situation that would require you to embody a rejected aspect of yourself, your psyche sabotages the opportunity. You unconsciously avoid leadership roles because you've made aggression wrong. You sabotage intimate relationships because you've made neediness shameful. You undermine your creative projects because you've made self-expression dangerous. Neuroscience now confirms what Jung intuited. The brain's default mode network, the part that maintains your sense of self, actively filters reality to preserve your existing identity. It will literally prevent you from seeing opportunities that would require you to integrate disowned parts of yourself. This is why people often feel stuck, as if life is happening to them rather than through them. They're not victims of circumstance. They're victims of their own psychological defense systems. The cultural consequences are equally staggering. Carl Jung predicted that individual shadow work wasn't just personal, it was essential for collective survival. When large numbers of people remain unconscious of their own darkness, they become susceptible to what he called psychic epidemics, mass projections that create scapegoats, wars, and social catastrophes. History is littered with examples of entire populations projecting their collective shadow onto other groups, leading to unspeakable atrocities. Consider how this plays out in your daily life. You scroll through social media, experiencing waves of judgment, envy, and moral superiority. You consume news that confirms your worldview while demonizing those who think differently. You participate in conversations where everyone agrees about who the bad people are. You feel righteous, informed, connected, never realizing that you're participating in massive collective projection. Meanwhile, the energy that could be fueling your actual purpose remains locked away in these disowned aspects of self. Your creativity is trapped in your rejected chaos. Your leadership ability is imprisoned in your disowned aggression. Your capacity for deep love is buried beneath your forbidden neediness. Your authentic power is suffocating under your rejected darkness. This is why so many people feel like they're living half-lives. They become experts at being acceptable versions of themselves while the parts that could make them truly alive remain in exile. They chase external validation because their internal validation system has been compromised. They seek meaning in achievements, relationships, and experiences that can never fill the void created by self-abandonment. The most tragic part? Most people never realize what's happening. They blame their emptiness on external circumstances, the wrong job, the wrong partner, the wrong location. They try to fix their lives by changing everything except the one thing that actually matters, their relationship with their own wholeness. But there's something even more disturbing than living a divided life. It's the moment when you begin to suspect that everything you've been taught about healing, growth, and self-improvement might be keeping you trapped in the very patterns you're trying to escape. Here's the radical shift that changes everything. What if the goal isn't to overcome your darkness, but to befriend it? What if your shadow isn't a problem to be solved, but a teacher to be consulted? What if the very parts of yourself you've been trying to transcend are actually the keys to your transformation? Jung understood something that modern psychology has forgotten. Integration, not elimination, is the path to wholeness. He called this process making the unconscious conscious, not through positive thinking or spiritual bypassing, but through the courageous act of turning toward what you've spent your life running from. This rebellion begins with a shocking recognition. Your shadow has been trying to protect you all along. That rage you've been suppressing, it's been trying to show you where your boundaries have been violated. That envy you're ashamed of, it's been pointing toward what you actually desire but haven't allowed yourself to pursue. That fear you've been medicating, it's been alerting you to what matters so much that losing it would devastate you. The ancient Greeks understood this principle in their concept of enantiodromia, the idea that everything eventually turns into its opposite. The more you try to be purely good, the more shadow you create. The more you try to be always strong, the more you secretly crave vulnerability. The more you perform happiness, the more you disconnect from genuine joy. Jung saw that psychological health requires not the triumph of light over dark, but their creative tension. Consider the historical figures who changed the world. They weren't the ones who successfully eliminated their darkness. Martin Luther King Jr. channeled his rage into righteous action. Gandhi transformed his aggression into fierce nonviolence. Virginia Woolf alchemized her depression into literary genius. Carl Jung himself experienced what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, a psychological breakdown that became the foundation for his revolutionary insights. The rebellion isn't about becoming your shadow, it's about reclaiming the energy trapped within it. When you stop fighting your anger and start listening to its message, you discover your capacity for passionate advocacy. When you stop running from your neediness, you find your ability to create genuine intimacy. When you stop denying your selfishness, you uncover your power to protect what you truly value. This process requires what Jung called active imagination, a practice of consciously dialoguing with the rejected aspects of yourself. Instead of pushing away the uncomfortable emotions, you invite them to speak. You ask your rage what it's trying to protect. You inquire of your shame what it's trying to hide. You listen to your fear's warnings about what you're not ready to lose. But here's the rebellion's most dangerous secret. Once you begin this integration, you can no longer pretend to be who you were before. The comfortable lies about your nature become impossible to maintain. The persona you've built your life around starts to crack. People who were attracted to your false self might reject your authentic one. The systems that rewarded your performance might punish your truth. This is why most people resist shadow work, not because it's difficult, but because it's effective. It doesn't just change how you feel, it changes who you are. And once you taste the electricity of living from your whole self, rather than your acceptable self, there's no going back to the prison of partial existence. The rebellion demands that you become an archaeologist of your own soul, excavating the buried parts of yourself with the same care you'd give to priceless artifacts. Because that's what they are, priceless aspects of your humanity that were sacrificed for acceptance but never actually lost. But even understanding this rebellion is just the beginning. The ultimate truth, the one that will shatter everything you thought you knew about purpose and meaning, awaits in the deepest chamber of this psychological archaeology. Here is the revelation that will haunt you long after these words end. Your darkness is not the opposite of your purpose. It is your purpose in disguise. Everything you've been searching for outside yourself, your calling, your meaning, your reason for existence, has been imprisoned within the very aspects of yourself you've worked hardest to deny. The parts of you that feel most dangerous, most unacceptable, most shameful, are not obstacles on your path to authenticity. They are the path itself, disguised as obstacles to test your commitment to becoming whole. Jung discovered this truth in what he called the process of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming who you truly are, rather than who others expect you to be. But here's the twist that changes everything. You cannot individuate by adding new qualities to yourself. You can only individuate by reclaiming what was always yours but was hidden in the shadow. Your deepest gifts are buried in your deepest wounds. Your greatest strengths are camouflaged as your most terrifying weaknesses. The very thing that makes you feel most isolated from others is precisely what makes you irreplaceably unique. This is not metaphorical poetry, this is psychological fact. Consider this staggering possibility. Every time you felt ashamed of an aspect of yourself, you were actually encountering your unrealized potential. Every time you've projected onto another person, you were meeting a part of yourself that was ready to be reclaimed. Every time you felt triggered, disturbed, or inexplicably emotional, your psyche was pointing you toward the next piece of your wholeness that was ready to be integrated. The ancient alchemists understood this principle when they spoke of transmuting lead into gold. They weren't talking about literal metals. They were describing the psychological process of transforming what appears worthless into what is invaluable. Your psychological lead, your rejected emotions, your disowned impulses, your forbidden desires contains the gold of your authentic self. But here's the final paradox that will revolutionize how you understand existence itself. The moment you fully embrace your darkness, it stops being dark. What you resist persists, but what you integrate transforms. The anger becomes passion. The neediness becomes connection. The fear becomes discernment. The selfishness becomes self-respect. The very qualities that once seemed to threaten your goodness become the foundation of your power. This is why Jung said that your greatest wound becomes your greatest gift, not because suffering is noble, but because the energy you've spent hiding from yourself is the same energy that, when reclaimed, becomes your unique contribution to the world. You don't heal in spite of your darkness, you heal through it, with it, as it. Your purpose isn't waiting to be discovered in some future achievement or spiritual awakening. It's waiting to be remembered in the reunion with your disowned self. Every quality you've rejected, every emotion you've suppressed, every aspect of your humanity you've deemed unacceptable, these are not your flaws. They are your raw materials. The person you're meant to become already exists. They exist in the shadow, waiting for you to stop running and start integrating. They exist in your projections onto others, showing you what you're ready to reclaim. They exist in your dreams, your slips of tongue, your inexplicable reactions, all the ways your wholeness keeps trying to break through your carefully constructed persona. This is the ultimate rebellion. Living as if your entire self, light and shadow, acceptable and forbidden, conscious and unconscious, has value. Not because you've transcended your humanity, but because you've finally decided to inhabit it fully. The hero's journey isn't about slaying the dragon. It's about discovering that you and the dragon are one, and that your power comes not from destroying your darkness, but from dancing with it. The treasure you seek is not beyond the underworld, it is the underworld, transformed by your willingness to claim it. So, ask yourself now, in this moment when everything you thought you knew has been turned upside down, what aspect of your shadow are you ready to meet? What have you been calling your weakness that might actually be your superpower in disguise? What part of yourself have you been ashamed of that could be the very thing the world needs from you? Your purpose is not hiding from you. You are hiding from it. And the place you're hiding is in the rejection of your own wholeness. The moment you stop running from your darkness and start dancing with it, everything changes. Your relationships become real instead of performative. Your work becomes meaningful instead of obligatory. Your life becomes yours instead of borrowed. Because here's what Jung knew, that most people never discover. Wholeness is not a destination you arrive at. It's a recognition of what was always true. You were never broken. You were never incomplete. You were only convinced to abandon parts of yourself for acceptance, and then you forgot that you were the one who could invite them home. The invitation is extended. The choice is yours. Your shadow is waiting.